Americans for Safe Access is celebrating our 23rd anniversary. For over 2 decades, we've brought medical cannabis stakeholders together to meet the immediate needs of patients while addressing knowledge, policy, and regulatory gaps, clearing the way for a national medical cannabis framework that serves all patients. What you may not know is that ASA has been women-led ever since I founded the organization in 2002. So for our 23rd anniversary, I've created this series where I've interviewed women who have taught me everything I know about medical cannabis. My goal is to share the inspiration that these women have brought to my life with new and seasoned advocates alike. I'm honored to present the women who crush, the women who get shit done. If you haven't met my next guest, Kimberly Cargile, you are in for a treat. I've been working with Kimberly for over 20 years, and she has really continued to create safe access for patients and is proving that medical cannabis is live and well. Hello. So nice to meet
Hi.
you, Kimberly. Thank you for taking some time to chat. And yeah, just I'm excited to have this space to introduce the world to the amazing cannabis space that I see. So thank you so much for, I know you're super busy, so I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. You're one of my longtime mentors, and I cherish any opportunity to speak with you and learn from you. So thank you so much.
I feel the same way. I was reading over your bio and it's so amazing what you've been able to build. And I was remembering, when, and I don't even know, we've been doing this for so long, right? ACE is coming up on its 23rd year. But I remember it must have been over a decade ago. Every time I would see you in Sacramento, you'd say, "We're almost open. We're almost open." And I just think about how many challenges you had in the beginning just to get the sort of the beginning going and where you are today. And I'm just so excited for you to share your story with folks. And really, I think you're such a model for how businesses can participate in this space. So I just want to get started. Just tell us a little bit about how you got into the cannabis space.
Well, it started out in college. I went to Humboldt State University, so that definitely influenced my decision. I had to work my way through college, and so I was growing cannabis to help me get through college. I was studying cellular and molecular biology as a pre-med student. And I was also working at the gym, teaching yoga as a personal fitness trainer. So I started to get really into natural medicine in general, started studying a variety of natural medicines. And since I was a science major, I thought, wow, this cannabis is very interesting. It's a very interesting plant. I started studying more about it. I went down the rabbit hole and realized that there was a great deal of repression around cannabis, around all natural medicine at that time, 20 years ago, but particularly about cannabis. And so when I graduated college, I moved back to Sacramento, and I took a part-time or a full-time job, but I thought, oh, I'm just going to do this until I figure out what I'm really doing with my life. And I was given the opportunity to be the assistant to Andre Special, who you
Wow.
know and love, and manage her dispensary in Sacramento. And during the first few weeks, she asked me to film a video of the patients one on one. So I spent a whole week just sitting in a quiet room behind closed doors, interviewing patients about why they were using cannabis. Was it really helping them? And did they really need dispensaries? And at that time, I knew about the repression. I knew that cannabis was legal for medical use. I was part of the system, but even I still had some skepticism. But after a week of talking with these patients, hearing about all the different illnesses and disorders, symptoms that they were treating with cannabis, and how important safe access was to them, I woke up in the middle of the night one night and I was like, wow, this is serious. These people really depend upon dispensaries. They really need us to do this for them. And they are literally too sick and too scared to do it themselves. So I said, I have nothing to lose. I don't have a family that I'm worried about, letting down. I don't have any kids. I don't have some great job. I don't have anything to lose, really. So I'm going to do this. And I signed up with Americans for Safe Access and California Normal and started writing letters and going to meetings and doing all of the things that are required to be an activist. And I've been doing it ever since 20 years now.
So amazing. Yeah, I think it's such an interesting advantage point of talking to patients. And it's so odd to think about sometimes we have to remind ourselves like, oh well, not everybody sees what we see. And we have to remember like, oh yeah, we were skeptics at one time. I was too. I had no idea that cannabis was medicine until my neurologist brought it up to me. So you just imagine how, policymakers are making bad decisions around this. It makes sense, right? But I think it
Yeah.
also is a testament of people telling their stories. I think, people assume that everybody knows that cannabis is medicine, and they really don't. They really don't. I remember back also in those days was when we were part of working in a dispensary was going through a raid training. I don't think a lot of people know that period of time, because right now, I've been every time I've been speaking to groups about medical cannabis, I just remind people that they're committing federal civil disobediences every day, and I think people really have no idea, maybe that it is still illegal federally, or that the federal government can do anything about it. But I'm wondering if you could just share some of your experience, because like right as you were deciding this is what I'm going to do with my life, like people were going to jail. Like there were intense raids happening at that time.
There were very intense raids happening. We closed down the dispensary multiple times to go protest at dispensaries that were being raided. Um, I participated in raid trainings and eventually worked with ASA to teach raid trainings. I was the first on the scene at multiple raids in Sacramento. I used to carry around the protest signs in my car and just leave them in there because you never knew when
Yeah.
you were going to have to go to a protest. One of them, I was the first person on site at 6:30 in the morning, all by myself. I was just putting the signs up on the fence, watching the feds take everything out of the business, and like, please, someone else show up, please. So eventually, other people showed up. It wasn't as scary after that, but they made us walk across the street and let us continue to protest. But there was a few years there where people were going to jail. They were getting their bank accounts seized, landlord letters. It was really, really intense. I didn't ever myself have to suffer the intense federal raids. I did have a raid by Sacramento Sheriff on our dispensary in South Sacramento called Common Roots, and the raid training that I received and helped teach from Americans for Safe Access came in really handy. I was really prepared for that raid and was able to avert any charges as well as, win our cannabis back actually through legal action. So it was really intense. As soon as I got the call that we were being raided, I was actually at the grow store because I was a grower also. And I got the call that we were being raided. So I'm like, okay, I'm on my way. Be there in just a second. And I drove as fast as I could legally. And I got there and I went in and said, "Hi, I'm in charge. I'm the one you want." And I pulled out my camera at the time. I didn't have a cell phone camera. I had an old-fashioned camera I used to carry around,
Yeah,
ready for
yeah.
the raids, and started videotaping them as they were asking questions, and then just started educating them. Everything I could think of regarding the science and the laws. I just kept going and going and going, and it was such an intense experience, but I wouldn't have been able to handle it the way I did if it wasn't for Americans for Safe Access raid trainings.
I think it's been a while since we've done those trainings. Some of the information is still up on the website. But I've also been thinking about that, if there was a cycle of raids right now, what would that look like today? Because I think on one hand, people aren't prepared for them, right? And so, part of why there were so few people that went to jail, even though we had so many raids, was because people knew to be quiet, right? And to wait for the attorney. And that really made a big difference in sort of how charges were filed. But, people wouldn't drive to a site of a raid these days, right? And I think if anyone was driving down the street and they saw law enforcement at a retail location, they would assume that they were doing something wrong and drive to the next one, right?
Mhm.
And so we don't have that sense of movement as much as we had back then. And so I'm a little nervous, I have to say, these days of what might happen under this administration. Luckily, we have some protections of the medical cannabis laws under the CJS amendment, but there's nothing, protecting the adult use businesses at all from the federal level. So but I think I'd love to hear how you balance, because I know as an activist you're well aware, right, of the federal laws around sometimes how far it seems like we are from creating a national medical cannabis program. Uh, but how do you balance the sort of like, okay, yes, I have to get there, knowing that we want to get to a national medical cannabis program, but we have to, make sure that patients have cannabis today, and which means you're running a business, right? That has, you got to make sure you have supply, all the basic functions, and having, I'm sure, your bank accounts turned off every few months. So, but how do you balance that? Like, just mentally, it's a lot to carry. Because I know a lot of people don't think about the federal just for that reason. They're like, I can't think about that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's an extremely stressful industry, and there's a few things, a few keys to balance. One is to figure out what lights your fire, what keeps you going, because the majority of my job is really boring and really stressful. And
Best
so,
combination.
yeah, it's like, so it's definitely not this glamorous industry that a lot of people think it is when they get into it. So for me, it's one-on-one consultations with parents or with patients, and parents also. I run our parents program, but it's the consultations, it's the classes I teach to my employees, as well as the schooling that I'm in at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. I'm in the master's degree for the cannabis science and therapeutics. And so really, I think like what lights my fire is the science and the medicine. So as long as I can keep those as part of my work week,
Mhm.
incorporate that in, then I can handle all the taxes and the regulations and the inspections and the audits and the lawsuits and just like the craziest stuff that happens. If I continue to just remember why am I doing this and incorporate that into my life.
Yeah, no, it's amazing again, once you're touched by patient stories and their lives. I definitely have, over the years, we've lost a lot of patients. I know you've had this experience as well. It's really a hard part of this work. But I just think of how many, literally hundreds of people that I've met doing this work that spent their last 2 weeks of their lives going to protests, right? Like literally like the last week of their life sitting in a courtroom supporting someone else. And so I know when I get frustrated or annoyed by a bunch of egos in the room, like I know that I have got a big shoe to fill as far as advocacy goes. And so I guess what I've always wondered about your approach, because I've never seen you not in a good mood. I feel like you've always been the person to be like, okay, buck up. Like, you know, how do you give that to your staff? Like, how do you train people to carry that on? Because I noticed that and one of the things I think is remarkable about the way that you've approached your businesses is um, you know bringing on partners within your staff, and being able to really grow your footprint through bringing on staff. But I'm wondering, how do you train someone on keeping the attitude that you have?
Well, my attitude really comes down to if it's not fun, I don't want to do it. So, like I say, we have three goals at my business. One is to provide high quality consultations and medicine to patients. Two, to advance the industry. And three, to provide a happy, healthy workplace. Because we are with each other longer than we're with our families. We're with each other more than we're with anybody else. So that's my number one rule is you have to be nice if you want to work here. You can make any mistake in the book, but you cannot be mean to people because
Right.
I just can't handle it. I can't handle the negative energy. It really gets to me. And it hurts my soul and my body. And so I just set that rule. Like you have to be nice, you have to have fun, or this isn't the right place for you. And I just stay away from anyone who's not nice and not fun. But when it comes to training my staff, I have partnered with over 25 of my employees have come on as owners over the last 5 years. And many of these people actually have worked with me for many, many years. Some of the people have worked with me all the way back to Capital Wellness and River City Wellness.
Wow, yeah.
And so they really what I said was, I was given this opportunity at a therapeutic alternative. I was offered it by the owners. They said they wanted me to be a partner. And I didn't feel worthy because I didn't have the money to become a partner. I thought you had to have a certain amount of money. It costs a certain amount of money to start the business. So I'm like, I don't have a couple $100,000 to be your partner. And then the same thing happened. I woke up in the middle of the night after I told them no. And I thought, you know what? I have experience. I know how to run dispensaries. I'm dedicated. I will do a good job. I love the patients. I know the science. I already know all the politics and all the city council and all that. And I thought, I do have value. So I called them back and I said, yes, I want to be a partner. And that experience inspired me to do the same for my employees. So I said, anyone who has the will, the smarts, the determination, the backbone to do this, let's do it. And so we've started 10 dispensaries, two farms, manufacturing and distribution company, over the years. We've also applied for many other dispensaries. You may know it's a competitive process here in California. And so we haven't won them all. We've probably lost more than we've won. And so a lot of those employees weren't able to fulfill, their journey to become an operating dispensary, but many of them were and are very successful today. And so basically, that opportunity that was given to me, I thought, this is great. I want to do this for other people. And if they want a dispensary of their own, let's get one.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And I think, you and I have talked about this a lot in the changing landscape, especially where we have adult use that has come into states with medical. And, while for years people kept telling us that if we just legalized cannabis, that would take care of everyone, and we wouldn't have to worry about patients anymore. And, something that I really admire about you and your commitment to patients is that you have been able to, keep your dispensary medically focused. And so I would love for you just to tell people what they can expect if they come visit you. Like what is a patient going to experience? Because I think there's a lot of patients out there that don't remember, they weren't around when that was, how patients were treated. And so I think, part of, why I want to tell these stories and create platforms like this is to remember that it's nice for you and I to sit around and reminisce, but there's actually a lot of people that don't know what's possible. So I would love for you just to take some time and be like, okay, if I'm going to become a patient at your dispensary, what can I expect?
Thank you. Yeah, we are considered the most medical dispensary in Sacramento. So, doctors refer patients directly to us, Sutter, UC Davis, um, and And we really have grown a niche for that, which is really helpful as far as the business aspect goes. It's protected us from all the competition. And it's really based in the fact that I started out as pre-med and a holistic healer. And so I really wanted to really create a space that was just fully embraced medical. So we provide our staff with onboarding, extensive onboarding education, as well as continuing education every 2 weeks. We wear scrubs. And we have a very similar vibe to a doctor's office where we do one-on-one consultations with our patients. We carry a variety of products that you can't find at other dispensaries in Sacramento. Our goal is to provide the biggest array of different cannabinoids and ensure that our staff's educated on the pharmacological effects of the cannabinoids. We really want to create a sanctuary for our patients. A lot of them come to us directly after they've been diagnosed. We're in the medical district of Sacramento, so surrounded by hospitals and doctors, and they come to us because a lot of their nurses and doctors will tell them about us. And so really when a patient comes here, they can expect a really like calm, low key atmosphere, quiet music, and people who really, really care. Like that's our driving force, is helping these patients find relief from their symptoms. And that's what lights our fire and keeps us going. So that's our goal. We want to find the products that the patient needs to help them on their journey. And we love doing it. It's the best gift ever to be able to help someone relieve their pain and sleep better, reduce their anxiety, and increase their mood.
So amazing. I mean, I think, in just healthcare in general, one of the number one complaints that patients have is they don't feel heard. And I think that, when a patient goes to a retail location that patients aren't centric, the experience they have they may not continue to try to find the right cannabis, right? If they're not treated with care and welcoming. It is, using cannabis as a medicine is really foreign to a lot of people, right? There's no, prescription and an exact dose, and patient participation can be a challenge. But when you experience yourself or see patients benefit from using cannabis, it makes you want to try everything you can to explain how they can use it. So well, I am so thankful to know you, to have you in my circle. And I really am looking forward to a day that we create a national medical cannabis program where we have dispensaries like yours, which will be probably called specialty pharmacies, that are legal federally, and that you'll be teaching at medical schools how, and within pharmacy schools, how to help patients find their medicine. So you're a beacon, Kimberly. I'm so honored to know you.
Likewise.
And is there any final thoughts you want to leave us with? I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I just want to encourage people, patients, advocates, businesses to get more involved. A lot of times these laws will pass and people will complain about them, but we do have an opportunity to change them. In my 20 years, I've helped change probably over 100 local laws, and there's been at least 50 to 100 state laws that have been able to be passed to improve medical cannabis patients' lives, the industry, and provide environmental protections and public safety. And I think that a lot of us think that we don't have a voice, but actually we just need to speak up and use our voice, and we can make a change. So I just really want to encourage people to do that in any way they can, whether it's attending a meeting, writing a letter, making a phone call, because your voice does matter.